All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Athlete Podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm super excited for our guest today. Our guest today is someone that I have a ton of respect for, the Director of Student Affairs, the Athletic Director at McMurray University, Sam Ferguson. Sam, welcome to the show today. How are things going in your world?
Alex, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. What an honor it is to share a platform with guys like Damon West and Jace Reuter and others. I'm honored to have to be here as your guest, and just really appreciate your friendship, and things are going well.
That's great to hear, and thanks for taking some time out of your busy schedule. I know you wear a lot of different hats in your leadership role and all the different things that you do. I mean, what's it been like? Well, actually, before I even go there, I've had the chance to speak at McMurray a few times, and it's in Abilene, Texas. I love going to visit that place. You guys have a great steakhouse there. You guys have a lot of things to offer. Tell the people, if they have not been to Abilene, Texas, what's so great about it, and why do you love it there?
Best people in the world are in Abilene, Texas. I heard someone speak at a Hall of Fame dinner one night in the community, and he said, it's flat, it's dry and dusty, the wind blows, there's not a lot of landscape. So God said, because of all those things, we need to put the best people there. And that is certainly true. Abilene is a wonderful community, and I love calling it home.
That's awesome. Yeah, you got me onto that steakhouse there, which is amazing. You have just the athletes I've met there and the coaches I still try to keep in contact with. You guys have a really cool, unique culture, and that's why I thought it would be cool to have you on today and just talk about a lot of different things. And I do want to thank you also in advance for sharing your story. Today, I want to kind of dive into some of the things that you've been through and kind of some of the trials that God has brought you through in your life. And so just to jump right in to your story, if we can rewind about 15 years in your life. So on Tuesday, October 25th of 2005, your life was changed forever. Can you take us through what happened on that day?
Yeah. Well, I've never really told this story, and it was much easier to write, and I'm feeling like the butterflies popping up right now thinking about telling it now. But I was the sports information director at Averett University. We were hosting a volleyball match against Ferrum College, and the match ended, and instead of writing my press release at the campus, I decided to go home early. I used to do that to try to get some extra time with my wife. And I came home, and I remember the TV was on, the door was unlocked, and it was just an odd scene, and didn't see her anywhere. And looked on the counter, and there was a note taped to the counter, and that note in so many words said, I've been struggling, and I've been trying to deal with this, and I've tried to put on a happy face, but I just can't take it anymore. And went to the basement, and I found my wife of 13 months. She had committed suicide, and you're right, that will certainly change your life. And I wasn't sure that my life was going to have much value to it at that point. So it was a tough time, but you learn that when you surround yourself with good people, you can get through that. And when you surround yourself with, when you embrace the faith of God, when you have faith in God, then that'll help you get through those as well. So.
Man, well, thank you for your vulnerability and what, I mean, for maybe people that have gone through similar experiences or for people that haven't, I mean, how do you even begin to put into words like the confusion or the emotion that you even experience? Like, how do you even go about that?
Well, lots of things go through your mind. Was it my fault? What did I do to create this? Anger. I remember the pastor at her funeral said, you can do three things. You can be angry, and you can blame yourself, or you can be thankful for the time that you had with Annette. And I was really struggling with number three. I had plenty of anger, had plenty of, placing plenty of blame on myself. But it took me a while to embrace that third piece, because I guess I was pretty self-focused, and I was pretty lucky. I was very lucky to have her in my life for as long as I did. But the emotions and the confusion is definitely real, and you feel like there's all these things I could have done differently. For instance, she called on the phone in the middle of the match, or right before the match, and I'd left my cell phone at the scores table and I'd walked away. I missed that call. I mean, like, what if I picked up that phone? How would it be different? What would have been different? If I'd recognized, maybe I was spending too much time at work and I didn't recognize the struggle she was going through. So there's the enemy will put lots of thoughts into your head when you go through a trial like that.
And I'd heard before that you mentioned that there was a Bible story like the Sunday after she had passed. Do you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, and little miracles started popping up, and this was one of them. Really, really quickly after her passing. So we would go to church together, Mount Hermon Baptist Church in Danville, Virginia. And I'm no Bible scholar, Alex. I'm trying to get better, but I'm no Bible scholar, and I certainly was not one when I was married to Annette. So every time the pastor would say, "We're going to read out of, we're going to read out of John. Here's the chapter. Here's the verse." I would flip through the Bible, for minutes. They'd finish reading the verse, and I still never found it. And so it finally got to the point where Annette would just grab the Bible, open it up, and hand it to me. Well, this particular Sunday, the verse was 1 Kings chapter 18, verses 20 through 24. And I grabbed the Bible and cracked it open and looked down, and I was on the exact page that they were reading that day. So,
wow.
Coincidental, I've had friends say, "Well, were you the second service?" Because someone could have opened it up and already created a crease for you. No, it was the first service. Well, was it the middle of the book? No, not really the middle of the book. I like to think of that as, and I was thinking about her at that time. You think about all these things when someone commits suicide, and salvation was one thing that I was thinking about related to her, and I don't know, that was a sign to me that she was still here and with me, and everything was okay. Awesome. It was going to be okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I heard that you'd kind of, after she passed, and I guess the next year or two, maybe a few years, you kind of just went through a period, which I think most people, almost anyone went through a period of, like you said, confusion, anger, feeling sorry for yourself, mad, all these different things. What were those 2 years like after her passing?
Well, it's lonely, Alex. I mean, you come home and you're used to seeing certain things. I left little reminders of Annette all through the house. Her bathrobe hung in the same spot for over 18 months or more. And, I think you get to the point where people expect you to be miserable, right? I mean, they look at you, that they associate you with this event. And so there's almost like shame and joy. And I kind of felt like, okay, I need to be sad. That's what people expect me to be. And I just spent too much time feeling sorry for myself and attaching my just basically my identity, attaching my identity to that event. And that wasn't very healthy of me at all.
And around this time, I believe, I think I have the timeline straight. After you met a pastor named Bruce who ended up having a big impact in your life. I think a lot of people, myself included, I think a lot of people that go through really hard times, it's almost like you don't want to have the vulnerability to bring someone else to the table and bring them in on the conversation. But it sounds like you did that. Can you explain that relationship with that mentor in your life and an encouragement to people maybe that are going through a tough time, bringing someone into your pain, what that did for you?
Yeah, Bruce is an amazing guy, and he is one of the reasons why I'm enjoying the life that I enjoy right now. Because again, I was spending a lot of time feeling sorry for myself, and wasn't, I wasn't going to be that. I wanted to be the tough guy that could get through it by himself, right? And Bruce helped me learn that everyone struggles and everyone needs help, and we cannot rely on ourselves to get through this. We need to, we're designed for community. And Bruce helped me recognize that. I met him, I remember it was the Averett University presidential search. If we had not been looking for a president, if I had not happened to shown up at that event, I would have never met Bruce. But I just happened to be grabbing a cookie the same time Bruce was. I introduced myself. He spent a lot, just invested in me immediately, asked me lots of questions, and had a great conversation with him. I thought, man, I like this guy. I'm going to go visit his church. So I visited his church the next Sunday. He followed up with a phone call, invited me to lunch, and he had no idea about my story. And it came up over lunch, and he started visiting with me weekly, basically as a counselor. And all these unresolved feelings that I had, all this pain and grief associated with losing my wife, he helped me work through them and helped me understand that, there's no reason to be angry. There's no reason to blame yourself, and that you really should, as the pastor stated at her funeral, be thankful for the time that you had with her. And he helped me move into that direction. And he introduced me to West Main Baptist Church, which that community was unbelievable for me in that healing. And I learned a big lesson that day. You can't do it alone. Just like as a as a quarterback or as any athletic team knows, regardless of how strong you think you are, you need others around you. You need a support system, and I learned that lesson well through Bruce.
Wow. No, that's really cool. And the fact that you guys connected, whether he sought you out or you sought him out, however, it ended up being just the fact that you were able to be vulnerable enough to let him in, because you had every right, I think, in a lot of ways to be angry, or to, most people would harden in that situation, but instead you were open to his counsel. And now it sounds like you're saying, because of the things that you worked through with him, it's changed the trajectory of your life, even to where you're at today. So
yeah, I live 1,500 miles from him now. He's since retired from West Main Baptist Church, but I think about him always, and I thank God for him always as well. Every time I look at Kim or the boys, I know Bruce had a huge role in that.
Yeah, for sure. And you just mentioned Kim. And so to fast forward a little bit in the story, you guys were actually, I think, met at church. And then can you kind of go into that story? What was the connection that you guys shared, and how did that all come together?
Well, it actually started a little bit before we met. I was visiting with Bruce, and he had told me about a situation where a young woman had lost her husband to suicide. And this was about 3 years, a little less than 3 years after Annette had passed away. And I felt compelled to do something, right? Wow, there's not many people who know what this is like. And I wanted to reach out to her. And so I remember Bruce told me about her, and I wrote her a note. Remember, I wrote her a note, and there's a songwriter named Tony Wood, who's from my hometown. And Tony, he wrote the song "God Is on the Move." You familiar with that song?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and well, Tony had sent me this CD that he was a part of called "Chaos of the Heart," and it is a CD with songs for suicide survivors. And so I had played that CD a ton, and it was helpful. So I mailed that CD to this woman who it was Kim, and we kind of created a pen pal relationship. I wrote her, she wrote back, and then I'd write her again, and then she'd write back, or have you ever felt this way? Yeah, this is how I felt, and this has happened to me. I mean, all handwritten notes, totally 1950 style. And
no Instagram messaging or no texting.
No, she had no Facebook account, and I don't think I did at that point either. So I'd never laid eyes on her, and we were writing back and forth. And one day at church, there was a new member orientation, and I was at this new member orientation, and this really beautiful woman comes up to me and says, "Excuse me, are you Sam Ferguson?" I was like, yeah, that's me. He says, "Well, I'm Kim Seamster." And so we met there at church, had that connection, and probably a little bit creepy of me, but I figured out her email address. I knew where she worked, and I thought, well, this is probably it. So I emailed her and invited her to lunch, and we started basically a support system. And yeah, but now she's my wife, so that worked out well. We continue to be a strong support system.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Just so cool to hear that story. And even fast forwarding further, can you tell us about Angelo and Caden and the whole story behind that as well?
Yeah, well, Kim and I got married in 2010, and we were older at that point, and both wanted children, and it just wasn't working out for us. We were in Virginia, and I landed this opportunity at McMurray. So we had always thought about adoption, but just never took the next step. And we get to Texas, and just everyone that we meet, it seems like, have adopted children. And it's really a part of the culture of West Texas. Is there are adopted children everywhere. And we felt led to go that route. And so initially we were looking at newborn adoption, and we were pursuing that. And Kim was in her second year of teaching at Thomas Elementary School, and this young guy showed up in her class, a little bit disheveled, a little bit dirty, cute, bluest eyes, and Kim found out a little bit about his story. I remember I was at Outback Steakhouse, and she called me on the phone, and she said, "Sam, the most beautiful little boy is in my 5th grade class, and he's in foster care, and he's basically living in a foster home because he's older, and a lot of times those older children have a hard time being placed." And I feel led to do something. So it's a long story. I don't know how much time you have here, but we started pursuing it. We started going through the process, and it's a lengthy process. And we were almost completed with the process, and then Angelo was gone. He was moved out of her classroom, and he had moved to the panhandle of Texas to live with another foster family. So we thought that was over, and that was November. Well, about 3 or 4 months later, in March, he shows back up in her class, and we really get the ball rolling hard then. And by June of 2016, Angelo and his little brother Caden, Angelo was 12 at the time, Caden was 2. They moved into our home actually on the 6th anniversary of Kim and I. So wow. On June 20th, 2016, we were married June 20th, 2010. Angelo and Caden moved into our homes as our foster children. And then a year and a couple months later, on August 4th, 2017, we adopted them, and they became Fergusons. Greatest day of my life.
That is so cool, and it's just awesome to follow your family on social media, the McMurray family. It's so cool to see how God is orchestrate all those events in your life. And, you know, in your role in athletics and leading a university, obviously there's been a lot of challenges in 2020. What has it been like for you? And obviously a lot of people listening are probably in leadership roles that it's different this year. And it seems like you've led really well during turbulent times. What's your best advice for people to lead well during these times and with all the uncertainty that's around us?
Well, it's important to keep perspective, Alex. You teach us that. I mean, when you come and visit with us, you talk about our culture. I just want to let everyone who's listening to this know that you are a huge factor in that culture and the positive leadership that you brought to us, and the ways you continue to lead us with your newsletters that I know our staff gets. But
Thank you.
you know this as well as anyone. You know, it's important to keep the right perspective and understand that it's going to be okay, right? And there's opportunities to grow through all of this, just like just like the trial that I went through. I know you've gone through trials as well. So we know on the other end, usually on the other end, we're stronger, especially if we take the right perspective. Your mentor, John Gordon, says, I think in the Power of Positive Leadership book, that in his hero hardship highlight exercise that he does with teams, so often that the hardship, without that hardship, the highlight that follows would not be possible. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at what it is that we need to learn from this, how we're going to use this to grow. And we know on the other side of this, we're going to be better for it.
Well, no, thank you for that. That's great insights there. And what Sam just mentioned was the hero hardship highlight exercise. A lot you can do with your team. It's really practical. You know, each person gets up and shares those three things. You know, who's a hero in your life? What's a hardship that you've had to overcome? And what's a highlight that you've seen come through that? And like you said, it's crazy to see the vulnerability and barriers and walls break down, because when people hear a story like yours, they have a whole different respect for you, and you know, it changes the dynamic. And so thank you for bringing that up, because that is a great thing for people to do in a very practical way. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
and,
yeah. Go ahead.
Can I share one more thing,
Yeah,
Alex?
absolutely.
I think another thing for leaders to remember is, I think this has been a time for criticism, right? I mean, the criticism is rampant right now. And I recently read a book called The Leadership Styles of Jesus, and there's a chapter in there about criticism and helped me understand that criticism comes with leadership, and the important thing is to figure out what piece of the criticism you need to hang on to, what you need to discard. I think there's always maybe something to learn with each piece of criticism, but like my friend at Liberty University told me, leaders suffer, right? And even the greatest human being of all time, he had criticism as well, and he suffered. So it's hard not to get discouraged sometimes, but I think when you think about the criticism coming your way, a lot of times that means that you perhaps you're doing something right. You know, you're positioned, you're making decisions that are tough ones, and a lot of times tough decisions are not the easiest either.
Wow. Well, if no one else needed to hear that on all the listeners, I definitely need to hear that. That was really insightful, and thank you for sharing that. And a great reminder that, you know, like you said, the greatest person of all time in Jesus, his message was rejected by so many people, and then, you know, he was ultimately killed. And so I heard a stat the other day that said, whenever you're like speaking, you know, 5% of people that are in the audience, so like you as the athletic director, 5% of the people when you're up there speaking, maybe not athletes, but, you know, just a random audience, they're going to be zoned out. They're going to be thinking about what they're making for dinner. They're not even going to agree with what you're saying. So to then change the way that you lead or live for that 5%, like, why would you do that? I think that's a great point that you brought up, you know, choosing what you're allowing yourself to listen to and affecting you. So, yeah, no, thank you so much for your vulnerability. One of the last things I like to ask, and I think it's kind of a hard question, but I think it's a good question. So at the end of your life, what do you want people to say about Sam Ferguson?
Well, I want people to, most importantly, I want Caden and Angelo to think I was a great dad, and I want Kim to think I was a great husband. And others, I just want to be thought of as someone who added value to them personally. I think early on, and I think what I went through helped me gain better perspective, but I was so focused on my career, and I still work really hard. It's important to me, but I don't want my career to elevate at the expense of relationships. And so at the end of my life, I'd like for the people who mean the most to me to have felt like that they're better off because I existed.
Wow, I would say just from knowing you, I would say you're already doing that. So you're on the right track there. But thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, and just the the way that I've had the chance to interact with Murray, and your leadership has been awesome to watch, and so thankful to learn from your leadership as well. And so yeah, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I think there's just so many different lessons that we can take from the things that God has brought you through in your family, that we all probably need to hear right now during this year. So
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, Alex, and I think again, I think a lot of the leader I am today, I have to thank for people like you and John and other mentors that I have. I'm just so thankful for what you do and how you've impacted our staff. I know you've spoken on our campus. We've made at least 2 visits to Abilene, and I know we've taken you out to Perini Ranch for at least 2 steaks.
that's right.
I know that for sure. But
Right.
yeah, you bring so much value to us, and just certainly grateful for what you do to lead. And let me ask you a question: How's fatherhood?
Fatherhood's going great. Our little first daughter, Kennedy, she's 5 weeks old, and hey, we got 7 hours of sleep last night, so we'll
Oh,
put that in the
nice.
win column for sure. So, but no, thanks for asking. She definitely she'll be a big McMurray fan, so maybe she can get a little McMurray, some McMurray gear that she can rep, and she'll be watching you guys next in 2021, or maybe basketball this winter possibly. So.
All right,
So
I'll make sure you get a onesie. We'll put a onesie in the mail for you as soon as we sign off here.
thanks so much. That'd be awesome. She'd love that. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for listening. Sam, thank you so much once again. Guys, McMurray University, their culture, it's a culture of greatness. It's on the rise. They're doing some amazing things in Abilene, Texas. If you're ever in Abilene, hit up Sam. I'm sure he'd love to grab lunch or show you around campus. They have some really cool things going on. So Sam, thank you so much. Keep making a difference, and thanks for coming on today.
Really appreciate you having me, Alex. Thanks for all you do, and love your podcast. And again, just grateful for your friendship.
Thanks so much. You have a good one.
You too.